just above the middle of page Lamed Gimel. And we're talking about the principle of Makif de Yosher and Makif de Chesed. And that is in line to understand the koyach that is in Torah to be for Beruri. The Vare Beruri. And we said that Berurim are accomplished not by direct seichel, by direct hamshocha. Berurim are accomplished by applying something that is essentially behelim. The atzmius element, and that is what affects the Berurim, as we discussed before. And now we have the means of presentation of this union is an union from Makif Yosher. Makif de Yosher, this is the union HaSeichel. Makif de Oir Choyzer, this is like the union HaBerurim. Now we discussed yesterday the Makif element in general. The principle of Makif, as we did throughout this learning, we pointed out, for example, we say, in Chochmah there is everything. Everything is not, does not come by accumulative process. You cannot accumulate everything. Everything is representative of a whole reality. And even though it's a whole reality, it can then be it can then identify within this reality everything, a lot of different things. This reality, this is what's called the Makif. Now, we have to understand this principle, that even though Makif is, let's say, it's everything, it's kind of, the word Makif means surrounding, it's all encompassing. You have to understand where that all-encompassing element comes from and what it represents. And this will bring us close to the principle of Helen Ha'atzmi. We spoke yesterday about a home and the furnishings in the home. Now, the furnishings in the home, we can readily identify their function. Identify the fact that they exist. You have to have a place to sit down. You can't stand all the time. So these are things that you can you can identify fully from even from a functional perspective. Then we have the home itself, the house itself. You can identify the house also from a functional perspective, such as that a human being needs protection against the elements, the weather, and so forth. This aspect of the home, that it protects a person against the elements, is even less related to the person than a chair, for example. A chair a person needs all the time. He needs it because by virtue of how he's structured and how he operates. He stands on 2 feet. You can't stand indefinitely, you have to be able to sit down. And in order to contemplate something, you have to sit. In order to eat, you have to sit. Protecting against the elements, that's a circumstantial thing. That's an external thing. What if the weather is perfect weather? I don't need a home. So therefore, that aspect is even further from the human being than even the practical things that he needs. But then we say no. We say that a home is a very central element in human life. Odom she'ein Beis ein Odom. And I think everybody understands the significance, the truth in this statement. Where does that Beis come from? And the Beis is a makif that houses all the furnishings, all his things. Where does that makif come from? Again, clearly it is not, as we have pointed out, not to protect him or protect everything else. Because protecting, you know that this is all inadvertent. This is all peripheral, coming from outside of him. Saying it, Odom she'ein lo Beis ein lo Odom, that means it's something which is very personal. Protecting is not personal. Therefore, this brings us directly in contact, identifying the makif. The makif is the expression, is the gilui of the etzem. As we discussed yesterday, that Odom she'ein Beis ein Odom has to do also with all its functionalities and all that. So the Ayin HaBeis is a gilui, you could say. It's an expression, it's an identification. What is it identifying? Identify a real presence, an etzem. This is the expression, Odom she'ein Beis ein lo Odom. He is lacking the essential in what he is. Not he's lacking certain functionality, certain services, protection, comfort. He's lacking his very essence. So makif is the revelation, the identification of the etzem in a gilui state, in an identification state, in a presence state. There is the etzem the way it is concealed within himself, and then there's the etzem as you can identify it. But it remains etzem. It means in the essential, the presence of the person himself. So this is what makif. Makif is actually
the presence of the person himself, and it remains etzem. How those are one and the same thing?
Okay, this is what we're explaining now. That makif is the representation of the person himself, of the etzem. In that itself, there are two levels. Essentially, makif is that which remains connected to the essence. It cannot be disconnected. But in that general category, there are two levels. There is the makif de yosher and the makif de yosher. What's the matter? Turn what? This? This one is over here.
The noisy fan is the switches by the front door.
Not that way, the other way.
Yeah, that's the zero. The noisy, Avram, that fan has a switch by the front door next to the lights. The noisy fan.
That's a noisy fan. Right. Now, what does a yosher need? I know, you should have told me. Thank you. Mazel tov. What does a yosher need makif for? That is quite clear. You can have chairs, but if there's no one sitting in the chair, that's not a chair. The makif is what the yosher is actually representing. But there is a big difference between the makif de yosher and makif de chesed. In both instances, makif is that which represents the initial reality, the etzem. But in the etzem himself, there are different levels. For example, we're saying that a human being needs a chair to sit. This thing that he needs a chair to sit is, yes, it's a personal thing, but within the personal element it is because of the certain functionalities of the person, because he has to sit. Because he's not floating in the air, he's standing on his feet. Now it's that element has an actual presence in himself. So, as a presence, so makif de yosher, there's a makif that can actually be identified on an individual level. Although it remains a makif, in the sense that it is actually representing the person himself. For example, let's pursue this to a logical end. A person cannot stand all the time. Therefore, he needs a chair. He needs a chair to contemplate and to eat and so on. Why can't he just lie down on the floor? If he needs to rest his legs, he can lie down on the floor. So we say no. That is not the answer at all. He has to be able to function while remaining what he is. He has to be able to function on a pneumistic level while remaining what he is. Therefore he needs a chair. Because if he lies down on the floor, he's no longer functioning like a human being. It remains something connected to him, but it is also identifiable on a functional level. Then there is Makiv De'or Choyzer. Makiv De'or Choyzer is a Makiv that does not even express itself externally. It is a Makiv. It's not the Etzem himself. It's a Makiv, but it's a Makiv that is totally representative of the Etzem. We said yesterday that where do we see, how do we identify the Inyan from Eir Choyzer? Eir Choyzer means you go down to the very bottom, and there you identify the Oir at the very bottom, and from there you go back to the source. That's meant Eir Choyzer, which means that Mashpia goes down to the Talmud, so to speak, in the trenches, in his own Hell and Behester, and picks him out from there and shows him how within that Hell and Behester there is Oir, and lifts him up from there. That's meant Eir Choyzer. Now, how, so to speak, how exactly does this happen? If he is in the bottom, so how does the Mashpia bring him out of there? What does it mean? He brings him, he shows him oil in there. If it's dark, it's dark. There's nothing to see if it's dark. So we said the moshel for this is like the chayas hanefesh that is present in the little toe or in the heel, which is hardly sensitive. But let's examine this thing. When you talk about the chayas hanefesh, that's in the brain. There we can readily understand what is the function of chayas, of life. The function of life is, because if not for life, then the brain wouldn't function in the way the brain is supposed to function. In order to understand, in order to be sensitive to seichel, to anything, you have to have the chayas hanefesh. Like we say, a robot doesn't have a brain. And he is so capable, that's not a brain. He doesn't understand. He doesn't participate. He's not experiencing that which he's doing. The brain, the human heart, the human function, even the hand, is a participant in that which is doing. Therefore, he has to have chayis. In other words, the makif element in the brain has a koyach and a seichel. And to that there is the makif element, like the makif de yosher, here's the makif element. But this seichel actually comes from the nefesh, which is a living entity, which is life itself. The makif element is imperative in the seichel. This is what makes seichel function. The same activity without chayis would not be seichel. So there we see the correlation between the makif and the pnimi. The makif gives chayis to the pnimi. This is the Yosher. Now, going down with this from the brain into the heart, into the liver, into the kidneys, and then into the hands and the feet, all the way down to the heel. As you are, so to speak, descending lower and lower, like in halacha, there is a very great difference between Eiver she'aneshama tluya bo and Eiver she'ein haneshama tluya bo. An Eiver, a part, a limb, a part, an organ that life depends on, an organ that life does not depend on. There's a big difference. There are many organs in a person, many organs. On one side, a person shouldn't be lacking any organs, but a person can continue to live and function even without certain organs. So therefore, if he can live and function without certain organs, the makiv hanefesh, in other words, the chayis, is much less represented. In the brain, the chayis, the fact that is alive, is extremely important, significant. In the heart, likewise. But as you go further down, it becomes less and less significant, less and less related to the makif. When you go down to the heel, it's almost not related to the makif. The fact that you can step on your toes, little toes, there is a life in the toe. It's a muscular reaction. The fact that you can step on your heel is not because the heel has life in it. You can step on your heel. He doesn't even participate. He doesn't, in a sense, of course he participates, in a very minimal manner. There's hardly an element of connection to the life element, to the makif. So when you go down to that level, there is hardly any sense of life, any significance to the fact that it's alive. And there you say, no, it's part of the person, it's alive, it's part of the living person. In what way is it part of the living person? This is where the makif element of the person is identified not by the life-giving element, but the sensitivity, but by the essential reality of the person, the essence, the etzem. The living, the reason that the heel is alive is because it's part of the person. So when you come to the Makiv, the Oin Choizer, you're talking directly about the essence of the human being. It's alive. It's part of the human being. There you're really touching and revealing a completely different depth in this whole principle of the Makiv. And you are revealing an element of the Makiv that cannot be identified separate from the essence, because it doesn't have any function. Except for the fact that it's part of the person.
What is this? What is this limb that has no function, yet it's part of the person?
The heel. We just now explained.
I know the heel is so instrumental to the person that if you lose your heel, you're in a wheelchair, God forbid.
That's right. It's part of the person, but it's not part of the Chai as a person. It functions not quote unquote not as a living entity, but as a presence. The Chayas, the Makif element, it doesn't express itself in it. The toes function in a living manner. As a person walks, the toes are constantly bending out and propelling him further. The heel, nothing, just step on it.
Is that, how did you say the Makif is not revealed there?
Mm-hmm.
Only as it relates to the Togi. The heel is significant as it relates. The highest of the heel is significant as it relates to the total person.
To the essence of the person. Right. In other words, there is no Chayus per se that you identify. And yet it's alive. In what way? What does it mean it's alive? It's part of the person.
Now, Or Choizer relates to the heel. When one identifies that it's part of the etzem, that makes it Or Choizer. Yeah?
No, Oir Choizer identifies the Makif to the etzem, connected to the etzem. That's what Oir Choizer.
Or Choizer is what connected that to the etzem.
To the etzem. It doesn't have a presence per se. The Makif itself, which is the highest, for example, doesn't have a presence per se. It represents the etzem.
For the Oyosher, the Makif we say is the Chayas. Why do we say, what's the connection between, why do we say that the Makif is the Chayas? In other words,
the Makif is the Chayas. The reason you're sensitive, I'm saying, Seichel and Midas,
right?
Because you are alive. Because the Chayas are never the Makif element.
But why does Chayas represent the Etzem? Like, why is that called the Makif?
Because this is the
functional life.
No, this is the source of the function. This is the essential person. This is the reason he has all the functionalities is because he is a living human being. And with this we will conclude. To be resumed tomorrow in Mitzvah. Baruch Hashem that we got this out.
this which is or Khoizer, this is connected to Birurim, and that it goes to the it's to this or Machav the or Khoizer. This is connected to Birurim.
That's right. So Birurim is like the Makiv de Choizer. That's to understand Birurim. That's why is the muscle for that is Makiv de Choizer.